Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. I'm Nate Eaton here in our studio in Idaho Falls. We have an interesting program tonight. This has been one of those cases that I've known about for years, happened right here in Idaho Falls, but I've never really dug into it. I've never really had the time to explore it some more. But over the past several weeks, I've been doing some research and looking at the case of Amber Hoopes, and her aunt is going to be here tonight to talk with us about the disappearance, along with Sergeant Bryan Lovell. He's an investigator with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, and he was working the night Amber Hoopes disappeared. She vanished, and you're going to hear from him as well. And the reason why this is extra timely this week is she disappeared on September 14th of 2001. Remember, September of 2001 was the day of that the terror attacks in New York City and in Washington and in Pennsylvania. And Amber disappeared 3 days after that terror attack. And that was back before the days of social media, back before the days of smartphones, of anything like that. So her family really had to rely on the press, on the media. And you'll hear from her aunt in just a minute that, you know, when they went to the local TV stations, they said, we're all 9/11, like wall-to-wall coverage. Anyway, we'll get to that case. It's fascinating. There's some pictures I want to show you about the case, and you'll hear from those people in just a minute. But a couple of other news items to talk to you about. First of all, I'm going to try every Thursday at 7 to do Courtroom Insider. We were heavy, you know, every night during the Daybell trial. I know many of you have missed tuning in every night, and I have missed actually hosting these shows because so much news happens with different cases that I think it might be nice to come on and talk about it. So, and there's some really cool guests that I'm lining up and that have confirmed that will be coming on about different crimes, different court cases across the country over the coming weeks. So if you can't watch us live, you can go back and watch it again. The big news today, the Bryan Kohberger case, it's going to Boise. The trial will be in Boise, and wouldn't it be ironic if it's in that same exact courtroom where Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were tried for the past 2 years? I didn't think I'd be going to Boise for a third time, but it looks like I'll probably be there next summer. That will be the longest of the 3 trials, or it's scheduled to be the longest. I believe it's supposed to be all of June, July, and August. I don't know if it's going to be in that same courtroom. It might be in a different one. What I do know is that Judge Hippler is the judge presiding, not Judge Boyce. Judge in Latah County gave up the case, asked the Supreme Court to find a new location and a new judge. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court did. They announced today it's going to Boise in Ada County. The judge is Judge Hippler. He is the administrative judge for Ada County. I actually interviewed him 2 years ago for the Lori Vallow trial. Here's a piece of that interview that I did with him so you can get an idea of what he looks like. He was very polite to me, and he actually held meetings with the media before both Chad and Lori's trials and spoke with us about covering it and the hours and whatnot. And he seemed receptive to the media. And I'm telling you this because we of course want to have access to have camera access in the courtroom. We'd love to have our cameras, or the media cameras, in there so that you all can watch the trial. So that's the big news today. No real big news on Chad and Lori's cases, but I expect some to be over the next few weeks, that there could be some stuff coming about that. The other big news, you've all been waiting, I know many of you, look what is back in stock. Mug shot shirts. They're back, but we have less than 100 of them. So if you want one, go to eastidahonews.com/shop, SHOP. You'll see them on there. We do have all the sizes from small to 4X. Some of the sizes we only have like 3 or 4 left, but we ordered some extra, and now we're ready to sell these out. It's a great Christmas present. I mean, it is. You can give them away for Christmas, holidays coming up. So yeah, there's that. Okay. Let's jump into the case of Amber Hoopes. Amber Hoopes was 20 years old September 14th, 2001, she walked out to her grandparents' auto body shop in Idaho Falls to use the computer. That's the thought. After sending an email and logging off the computer around 1 a.m., she vanished, and no one has ever been arrested in connection to her case. That same night, a truck from the business shop, that shop she went into, went missing. It was later found abandoned at the corner of Lincoln and Ammon Roads in Bonneville County. There are photos of the truck that was found, the interior of the truck, missing posters. She was wearing a white t-shirt, gray shorts. She was last actually seen at 10:30 p.m. A gray robe. Amber, 5'5", weighs 140 pounds. These are the posters that went out. And these photos are the suspect. Hescock was his last name. And here, I'm not going to go too deep into his connection because you'll hear it here in these interviews about how he was connected to the case. And not just this one case, but at least one other, possibly two, and why it's kind of gone cold. So we're going to get into these interviews. The crazy thing for me is that Amber Hoopes is my age. She graduated in 1999 from high school, according to her aunt. Could have been 2000, but I'm pretty sure it's 99. That's the same year I graduated. And I remember back in 2001, where I was, I can't imagine, I was young, I was 21. And you think where Amber would be today, what she would be doing. So we talk about that with her aunt here, Audra. She came into our studio. And I first want you to hear from Audra, and then after Audra's interview, we'll hear from Sergeant Bryan Lovell. Well, here in our studio is Audra Burgner. She is Amber Hoopes' aunt, and for the past several years, I guess you were telling me since 2005, you've really been instrumental in Idaho Missing Persons Day.
Yeah, I've focused on that after Amber went missing, trying to get September 14th proclaimed as Idaho Missing Persons Day. So in 2005, it was proclaimed, the governor signed. In 2006, we had our first event at the Sam Benyon Center.
And there'll be another event. I want to talk to you about that in just a minute, coming up on Saturday, on the 14th, on the anniversary. I want to go back, though, to the day that Amber disappeared. What do you remember about that day, the night, I guess?
I was going to go camping the next morning for about 10 days with some friends. So I saw Amber, I saw Amber at Mom and Dad's house Tuesday or Wednesday, and we were watching TV, watching the stuff on 9/11 and all that tragedy, and I was kneeling down beside her, and I said, I don't know what I'd ever do if he went missing. And that as soon as I got the phone call from my mom about 4 o'clock in the morning, I remembered what I had said to her. Mom said, Amber's missing and the shop truck's gone. And I knew right away something was wrong. Amber wouldn't have run off. She had no friends to run off. She didn't drink, she didn't party, she didn't have a boyfriend, she wouldn't have stolen the truck. If she would have wanted to go anywhere, she could have taken her car that was sitting right outside.
But she took the shop truck.
Somebody did.
Someone did.
I don't think she did, somebody else did. Well, she was in it.
Right. So she was staying with your parents in the home right next to the shop.
Yes.
And your mom calls and says Amber's gone.
Yeah, well, Mom saw Amber at 10:35, said goodnight to her. The bathroom separates the two rooms, Mom and Dad's room and Amber's room. Amber was laying on the floor, reading a magazine, watching TV. Mom said goodnight to her. Mom got up at 1 o'clock to use the restroom, saw what time it was, and Amber's light was still on and her door was still open a little bit. So Mom peeked her head in, and Amber wasn't in there. Mom saw some lights on in the house, and she turned off all the lights before she went to bed. So she went through the house, saw some lights, didn't see Amber, saw that the light going to the shop, because there's a sidewalk that separates the house and the shop, and that light was on. So Mom thought she was out in the office, so she went out in the office because there was a computer, and she was known to email people out of the country and download some music. And Mom couldn't find her in there, so she went and woke up my dad. And he came out, and he was the one that noticed the shop truck was gone, because they're all parked in there nice and tidy, and it was right inside the door, the overhead door. So there's only one specific way to get out, because, there's two, but you've got to have a key for the front, the great big gate. And the only persons that have that he is the owner of the shop, my dad, and the record driver. So you had to have worked there or been a family member to know that you go around back through the field and out through the end. It's about 2-block distance, and you go out on Lincoln Road.
And is that the way the truck was taken out?
Yes. And then and it was wet. It had rained a little bit, so there were marks going the other direction to the right.
So what'd they do then?
So they called the police after looking and calling the family, and they were kind enough to come out, but they really did. They thought Amber was just fooling around. She stole the shop truck. She'll come back. Not to worry. She just is having fun with some friends, and we just knew that wasn't the case. In fact, we all had a suspicion of who took her. I say that because probably about 3 months before Amber was abducted, there was an employee at the shop that left. I don't remember if he was fired or if he just left on his own, but he did not get along with my dad. My dad didn't get along with him. And he went and sold the Mac Tool stuff in the Mac Tool truck. And he came to the shop to sell the tools, and Dad asked him to leave and not to ever come back. So Mark said, "I will make it my lifelong vendetta to ruin you." And I'm not sure that he actually was out there to take Amber, because after 9 months later, he abducted another girl. And after that girl got away, people in the shop then came forward and said he was stealing things out of the shop. He'd go in there at night. So possibly he was in there at night stealing things, and Amber was in the office, and they ran into each other, and he had to take her. I don't know.
So I didn't know he had worked at the shop.
Yeah, he worked there for several years.
And what was his name?
Keith Hescock.
Yeah. Okay, so you all thought pretty quickly that it might be him?
Yeah, absolutely. We told him right away.
You told the cops?
Uh-huh.
It's him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, are you all trying to go out and search for her?
I went and made flyers. I just remember being on TV. The first thing you do, you make flyers, and that's the only thing I knew what to do because it was still dark. And I made flyers at the place that I worked. We got those out to gas stations, out on the highway, everywhere. And then as soon as Heavenly and Brent's ward found out about it, we had hundreds of people down at the Arnold's Bar X, it was called, where the shop truck was found. Mm-hmm. And actually the shop truck was found about 2:30 in the morning by an officer that was coming to the house. And he felt the hood of the truck, and it felt warm. And there was dust lining over the truck, but the truck had been wiped down otherwise in the inside with fingerprints. So there were no fingerprints that were useful.
So one day goes by, then 2 days, then 3 days. Yeah. I'm sure you're hoping, every morning this is going to be the day they find her or find something.
Well, there were, interesting enough, the shop truck was filled up with fuel the night before or the day before. So they kept the odometer readings, and there was a certain amount of miles put on the truck that no one from the family or the shop had done. So we searched in that direction, and then the vegetation that was found underneath the truck, a professor in Pocatello said that those vegetations only are in High C area and the Bone area. So we focused our attention to the High C area and searched there. And we searched in town, out in the country area, and then we focused in the High C area.
So the mileage that was on the odometer would have made sense had it driven up there.
Yeah.
It would have equaled out.
Yeah.
And then the truck was ditched
there
at Lincoln Road.
Yeah, because I think Hescock, had his motorcycle there and went behind all the houses on Lincoln Road, got into the shop because he knew they didn't lock the shop at night. And that's what he told the other employees: if you ever want to come in at night, they never lock it.
And she would go into the shop to email.
Yeah, most every night.
So did the police ever talk to
Yes.
Hescock?
He denied it, and he said he was home, and his family gave him an alibi.
That he was home?
Yeah. But then 9 months later,
right,
he abducted the 14-year-old off the trampoline, and that brave little soul got away and led the police there. They hid out. He came back from work. He called in and said he couldn't come to work, and they insisted that he come. So he had her chained up and zip tied up, and she was able to get away. And the policeman hid out, and then as he was coming home, he saw them. So it was a high-speed chase all the way up past High C. I'm not even sure the area anymore, but it's a long ways up there. Mm-hmm. And he got out of the vehicle. He had phoned his mom and said that he wasn't going back to jail or prison, and left her a message. And then he stepped out of the vehicle, walked a few steps, pulled his gun, shot and killed the canine officer, and wounded a deputy. And I think another one was shot in the shoulder. And then they fired back, and I think they hit him in the shoulder, and then he shot himself. So if he's the one that took her, well, you know, I don't think he would have ever told us anyway.
You don't think he would have?
No, I don't think he wouldn't have.
Do you think someone else knows more that's still alive, someone's still alive today?
I think possibly they do. But then his family was interviewed again after he killed himself, when they admitted they lied about the alibi, that he wasn't home.
The family did?
Yeah, that he came home, switched vehicles, and left again, and took the truck. So I think he took her, put her somewhere, dead or alive at that time, and then went back to her, and then moved her somewhere else in his vehicle. And then came home with wood. He came home with, like, he'd gone and got wood for the fireplace.
And there's never been a sign of her since?
No, nothing. And we have searched and searched and searched. And we would search again if we had any idea. But there's so much space out there.
Right.
We searched the Bone area this last fall. Took some cadaver dogs out there, and nothing was found. So we're focusing our attention now on High C area, up higher, where he killed himself.
Do you think that he was tied to Stephanie Crane?
Yes, I absolutely do. In fact, he worked for my mom and dad's business, and his truck was the same color and design as the truck that the people saw up there at the time by the bowling alley. And then the FBI got involved after the 14-year-old girl was abducted. So they get involved in the case, in Amber's case, and they want to see if we have the timesheets of Hescox for that day. And luckily we still had him, and he wasn't at work. He was hunting, and he actually did kill an animal. He tagged an animal that weekend, or that week, whenever it was. But I do believe he took her.
And that was, I think, 93. So that would have been, 8 years earlier.
Right.
And this was, for those unfamiliar with the story, she was a young girl who left school. I believe she went to a bowling alley in Chalice.
She was
walking home and was never seen again. And that one is still unsolved. So he could potentially be tied to that one, this one, and then the girl on the trampoline who fortunately got away.
Yeah, that was incredible.
So what do you want people to know about Amber?
I want them to know that she was just a wonderful human being. Loved her family, loved children. She was very, very shy, though. Wouldn't go to the store by herself. Her best friend was her little sister. Very sensitive, very smart. Just an all-around good girl.
And you said she had a job doing what?
She was a nanny for a couple in Idaho Falls for their 2 children. And she just adored them.
And she had graduated from Bonneville High a year or 2 earlier.
Yeah, and she was going to go to culinary school up at BYU.
Wanted to be a chef.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What's your hope? What's the purpose of Idaho Missing Persons Day?
It's to bring awareness and education and prevention to the city of Idaho Falls, and to give them tools in case this happens to their family, that they have information out there, where to go, what to do. And to remember not only Amber, but all the hundreds that are missing. And of course, it's the day that she went missing. So it's an anniversary of 23 years. But I just want people to focus just half an hour on the missing people. And if they ever know anything, just a little tidbit of something that they think is important, share it with somebody. It might be, it might not, but what would it hurt?
There'll be a special, I guess, memorial, you could say.
Yeah.
At noon on Saturday in front of the Bonneville County Courthouse, and you all are invited. The public's invited. Did you ever think about where Amber would be today?
Oh gosh, I think she'd be married and she'd have children, for sure.
Yeah.
She loved children.
Yeah. What would you say if someone watching knows something?
Oh, I would desperately plead with them to go to the police and let them know. It's been long enough. And if the man that we believed took her, he's not here anymore. So he can't do anything to him. And if they weren't in it with him, then they're not going to go to jail.
Yeah.
I just plead and beg for them to go to the police.
Yeah. Amber Hoopes missing since September 14th, 2001, 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully this is the year that maybe she's found and you can have her, return to your family.
Yeah, we can have peace of mind. I don't like the word closure because it never really, you still have questions of why and how and where, and in finding her, it would give me peace in my soul and my family peace.
Yeah, good. Audra, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming in. Yeah, that event on Saturday it will be probably pretty emotional because it's crazy that there's so many missing people and how many of these don't get solved and how many do. I always harken back to Elizabeth Smart. And even, this is not a missing persons case, but the case of Angie Dodge with Christopher Tapp and Brian Dripps, how that took decades to solve. And you just keep hoping that there's that one. Dior Coons, he's still missing. There's just so many things there. So my thanks to Amber's aunt for coming in and talking to me. Now, I want to play an interview I recorded with Bryan Lovell. He's the sergeant with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. He was working that night that call came in. Imagine you're at work, you're working the overnight shift, you get a call that a girl's missing. Not a girl, a woman. A woman is missing. You show up at the scene, and now, 23 years later, he's still with the department. Now he's a sergeant, and he's waited for answers all these years. So here is what Sergeant Lovell told me. Well, here in our studio is Sergeant Bryan Lovell with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. Every time this week comes, Bryan, I think about 9/11, of course, but then Amber Hoopes, who disappeared 3 days later.
Yeah.
And do you think maybe, well, I don't know, I wasn't here back in the day, back during 2001. Do you think maybe her disappearance kind of got lost in the news coverage because of 9/11?
It's possible. Is that what I remember that week? That we were, of course, from the 14th of September on, we were focused on looking for Amber, but at the same time, just flooded with, information about 9/11 and stuff. Information wasn't as available on the internet and things like it is now. So I don't know if it got lost in that coverage. I think the sheriff's office and family and people involved in that case were doing a lot to focus on that, and still had the 9/11 stuff going on in the background as well.
Yeah, social media wasn't around, obviously.
Yeah.
So take us back, because were you the first deputy, one of the first to work on it?
Yeah, so I was working night shift that night, and that call happened in my beat or my area. And I'd only been with Bonneville County for a few months at that time. I'd been working in Jefferson County and north of there for several years. So I was a little bit new just to the sheriff's office. I grew up around here, so I'm familiar with the area. But I ended up taking that call and gathering, the initial information and talking with the Burgners, Amber's grandparents.
What was the call? What was the call for?
So the call was that there was a missing person. And so I arrived, and it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I arrived, and I'm talking with Kathleen and Norris Burgener, and that's Amber's grandparents. They live in a house next to their business there on Lincoln Road. And they're telling me about Amber. They're telling me that, we last saw her here, we're watching TV, and she might have went out to the shop for a little bit. But Kathleen had woke up in the middle of the night and discovered that Amber wasn't in her room. Like, the light was still on, doors open. and she, fully expected her to be, asleep in bed, but she wasn't there. And then shortly after that, as they're looking around, they discover one of their vehicles was missing. And so, I'm on that call just gathering information and going through it with her grandparents, just checking the boxes. Could she be here? Is she with this friend, with this other family, or any family and friends? And, we were kind of eliminating those initial things off the list as we would do on that type of call. And, we just kept kind of coming to a dead end there, like nothing, she wasn't found anywhere. And so in the course of that, other deputies that were on, there was 3 or 4 of us on that night, came to the area to help as well. One of them, Deputy Thompson, he discovered the pickup that was missing. It's a business pickup, just a little more than a half mile down the road.
Missing from the auto body shop.
Yeah, because I communicated that information kind of over the radio or over, we had these bag phones at the time. And so I communicated that to the rest of the shift, that this is what I got. So, Al Thompson was coming over to help me dig into this some more as the night went on. But on the way there, he discovered that pickup. And then, that just kind of gave us more things to start checking off the list of, you're initially thinking, did she take off on her own? She's 20 years old, and, she could take off on her own if she wanted to. It wasn't like a juvenile runaway type of thing. But, we're trying to dig into who does she know, who's her friends, is this something that she would normally do, sneak out at night or anything like that? And there was none of that.
Was the truck abandoned? Yeah,
it was abandoned. There's, there on the corner of Ammon and Lincoln Road, there's a Maverick there now. But at the time, that whole neighborhood wasn't there behind it. The Maverick wasn't there. There was a building there that used to be a store, and there was a big kind of gravel parking lot. And so the pickup was abandoned there.
Empty.
Empty, just parked.
Were there any fingerprints? Were you able to check for that stuff back then?
Well, at the time, I don't know as we looked for that right off the bat. I think that truck was examined more thoroughly, down the road after that, or the next day, or in the days past that. I'm not sure. I worked through the night shift, and we got as much as we can, and of course day shift comes on, and we sort of handed that off to them to continue that search. Sure. And then of course when I come back on night shift the next night or throughout the rest of the set, we're continuing to look, and we're just going off whatever information has been found at that point. But initially, my involvement was pretty heavy initially there at first, and then it kind of got turned over to other people. But talking with grandparents about Amber and what kind of person she was and things she liked to do, this just wasn't quite adding up. So it was
her to just vanish.
Yeah, it was not normal. It was just way out of the ordinary, very, very much out of the normal for her routine.
So she was last seen watching TV there at the house.
Yeah.
And obviously, I assume she didn't have a cell phone because it's early 2000s.
Yeah.
So you can't track that. Any sign of her ever after that night? No. There's where she might have went from her bedroom in the house out to the shop. There's a computer in there and some exercise equipment and a tanning bed. So beyond those might be the things that she would do at that time of night, between 10 p.m. whenever Kathleen had last seen her there, when Kathleen went to bed. Between there and when Kathleen woke up and discovered her missing, those were the only probable things that she might do, but there's no real indication that she'd done that. She may have went out to the shop at some point, but out there in the shop, that's where the pickup was missing from. And, we were looking through the area. We found tracks through a field. There's fields that run across the back of all those properties for a ways. And, found where the pickup had run over a sprinkler pipe and out through the mud and out onto Lincoln Road and down towards where it was abandoned. How far it went, how long it went, I don't know as we've ever really, exactly pinpointed that, but
but I know those were things that were looked into in the days after that, since that time.
Did she have a boyfriend?
Not that I remember, not that we knew of.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was some, pen pal type email relationships that it looked into, and those were people that were way far removed from the area.
Right.
And that week, for however many days past that, there had been all the flights in the United States where there's no airplanes in the sky. I remember, they were talking about getting, search and rescue and some other contacts with planes around in our area to maybe try and fly and search some of these areas in the county. And they were going through the obstacles of just being able to get a plane up for that purpose.
Right.
And so there was some of those challenges there, but that also eliminated other things like, out of the area potential suspects. But there really just wasn't anything that was a viable, realistic type of thing that way.
Any sign of foul play in the home?
Not to my recollection. It was really just, she was there and then gone. The only thing that was missing was the clothes that she had on to sleep in, whatever, pajamas or t-shirt or whatever, and sandals that she used to walk from the house to the shop. So it's probable that she went out of the house and over to the shop for, get on the computer or listen to music or whatever, or use the tanning bed. We don't know. That's probable because there was some information that she was on a regular basis going over there doing that, and that's where the truck was taken from. And so the likelihood of that's what happened, or that's the point where she went missing, was there. But at that point, we're trying to determine, did she take the truck? Did she go somewhere on her own? And that was the thing that was odd about it is, if she had relationships and friends, if she decided I'm going to take off and go to the store in the middle of the night, or I'm going to go meet so-and-so, they just called me and they want to go meet or something, that was just not normal for her to grandparent. And if it was, she would tell them about it and say, hey, can I borrow the truck to go do this? And they'd be like, no problem. So for her to just do that without saying anything was very, very much out of the ordinary for her.
Okay, so it's been 23 years. Have there been any suspects?
Following that, there were suspects tied to that. The June following that, June 5th of 2002, one of those suspects had kidnapped a girl outside of Idaho Falls here, held her overnight, and she was able to escape.
Was this the girl that was sleeping on the trampoline
Yes.
with her friend?
Yes. Her name's Megan. And so she was able to escape from her captor there and identify that person as Mark Hescock. And he was one of the suspects, or had ties to the Hoopes family and the Burgners and that business there. And so I know that his tie there he'd been one of the people that were being looked at and vetted, along with everyone else that they could think of at the time, from family to friends to distant family to, whoever may have had contact with her. So he was one of those people that of interest, I guess, at the time. And then this following June ends up, kidnapping another person. She's able to get away. We end up in a pursuit with him that goes up into the hills up through Jefferson and into Madison County, and get end of a road and get stuck, and there's a shooting, and he shoots one of our canine dogs, shoots one of our deputies that injures him, and we end up returning fire and shooting him, and he ends up taking his own life there. So after that point, backtracking the things, his history, the things he'd done, the second kidnapping case, and those things, there were a lot of things that just sort of lined up that pointed towards Amber's case as well.
Right.
And I think over the last couple decades, whatever other suspects were out there, our detectives, the different detectives that have had this over the years, because it's remained active. I think they've done a good job in backtracking anybody else that could be a suspect, any other names and people that come up. But the most likely thing keeps pointing back to Mark Hescock. And so there's just most of this case is, most all of the information we've ever got has been vetted, and up to that point, we've just never been able to finish connecting that last piece and confirming it was him or not him or someone else.
Wasn't he also possibly tied to Stephanie Crane in Chalice?
Yeah, and my involvement in those things hasn't been a whole lot other than working for the same agency that's vetting a lot of that. But I do know that there were similarities in places he had been, things he had done that could have lined up with that case up in Chalice. And that was, a decade or so earlier, like 93, I think, so just less than 10 years earlier. So I don't know that case is still active, in Custer County. I don't know that last dot's ever been connected there as well. So you've got two cases with two still missing people almost at the same point that you just can't quite, you haven't found them yet, and we haven't quite connected that last piece.
Yeah, do you think that there would ever be a way to officially say, yes, it was him?
I hope so. This is, I've been at this for 30 years now and grew up around here, and that's probably one of the most significant things I've been involved in, those two pieces of that. And so I know just watching this, I'm a little bit outside looking in. I haven't physically been assigned to that and really worked that, because I was involved in those initial pieces, and then other people took over from that. But I know as time's gone on, technology presents itself, information comes about, you start discovering, like places where some of these suspects may have been, that you're trying to vet out, and they've done a good job at going and doing the best they can searching. But a lot of it's like a needle in a haystack. They're still trying to look for that needle. But what my hope is tomorrow there's some bit of technology or some piece of information that comes out that connects those dots, any of those dots really. And so we just don't know what's going to be invented tomorrow that would help us look back at all that and analyze it. I do know with all of our cold cases, and it's pretty standard in our profession, I think, technology and the way we do things has really come a long ways in 2-3 decades. And so you've got these open cases that are still active, and you have this new piece of technology to come in and look at that. They're applying at least what we have left of information and evidence to see if that produces something more. And as some of those cases have, we had bones that were discovered up in the Palisades area, and we had them in our custody for a long, long time. I think it's a group called Audra that does a lot of scientific analysis of bones. We're able to collect DNA from these bones that were 30, 40 years old, tie them to a family, tie them to a missing person case actually in Wyoming, and sort of close that. So you never know what could happen.
Yeah, you don't. And I'm sure for you, having it now being 23 years, every year around this time, you're like, another year.
Yeah. We're crossing another line there.
Yeah.
Another cycle.
And you're still in touch with the family, I'm sure?
Yeah. And from time to time, and as much as I can. And Audra Burgener, who's Amber's aunt, she's from the get-go kind of been on the forefront for the family and spokesperson, if you will, or whatever, but helping make sure that we keep Amber's memory alive and make sure that it's not forgotten. And I think the sheriff's office and we're partnering in that because we have that same desire to find Amber, to connect those dots and finish this out. And 23 years later, you've got all these other cases across the state, and I'm not super familiar with them, but I know there's a number of missing persons cases. And really, if we're taking a moment to think about Amber's case, we're really taking a moment to think about all of those. and make sure that they're remembered and that those are still open cases, that there's other detectives, investigators, and officers like me that really want to see those last dots connected in their lifetime.
Do you think somebody out there knows something more about this?
I don't know. I hope so. I think there's a good chance someone may have a piece of information that they don't realize is significant, that could be significant later. And what I know from, tips and information that comes to the sheriff's office is, someone sees a story about this case or reads about it on the internet, or this yearly anniversary comes around and we put a release out and someone says, I was around there and this, and I remember this thing happened, or I saw this, and they'll let us know about it. And we'll take that and go vet it as best as we can, and at least, try to put that on the list and compare to what we have and see if that is anything remotely helpful. It may not be right now, but tomorrow it might be. Tomorrow it might be the thing that makes all the difference.
Right, so they should contact you, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, anything you want to add, anything you want people to know about this?
I just think it's important for people to remember all of these cases and remember there's families tied to them, that are still searching for their loved ones. There's a lot of work being done across the board. If you've ever paid attention to the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children, they do a ton of great work, and they keep those memories alive and those active searches going. Everywhere across the country, there are people that are dedicated to doing great work at finding missing people, adults and children, and I think every chance we get, I think our community is really supportive of that and cognizant of that amongst all the other things happening in the world today. But I really hope people don't ever forget that those resources are out there working to that end.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sergeant Bryan Lovell with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. Again, if you know anything, call the police. They could use any tips that might, like he said,
Absolutely.
might lead to solving this thing. Thank you. And a big thanks to Sergeant Lovell for coming in and talking with me about this case. Again, this is Amber Hoopes. Last seen September 14th, 2001, 10:30 p.m., wearing a white t-shirt, gray shorts, gray robe, and 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighs around 140 pounds. If you have any information, call the police. And hopefully somebody has some sort of information, because that's what we need. So thank you so much for joining us here on Courtroom Insider. Remember, you can follow me on the following platforms: Facebook, Instagram, eastidahonews.com, the website itself, and our YouTube channel, and all the other places. Next week, we'll have another Courtroom Insider, and it should be good. I don't quite know who it's going to be. I know it's going to be one of 3 or 4 options. So thank you so much. Again, if you want a mugshot shirt, if you're just tuning in, everybody needs one. They're like the cool thing to do, right? Life goal, keep my mugshot of East Idaho News. You know what's really cool is that when I'm out in the community, I see people wearing these, and I'm like, hey, nice t-shirt. It actually is very, very cool. And I thank you. I thank you so much for supporting us and allowing us to do what we do. This is a job I love. Today, I'll do a little tangent here. Today, I was honored to MC an event for police officers and law enforcement officers who serve the community and do their best to protect all of us. And they honored 5 different, they gave 5 different awards, and we're going to be posting those videos over the next few days. I'll share them on my Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. And it's just amazing to be in a room full of men and women who serve to protect every day and do so much. And yeah, I know there are bad ones, of course. I was telling a person today, there's bad reporters as well. And someone said, the bad cops, there's probably no one that hates them more than the good cops. And we say that, because it makes them all look bad. But my hat's off to law enforcement who undoggedly and consistently work to solve these cases. And let's hope that there will be something on Amber Hoopes. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. We will see you next week.